keep you, like we said, no filter, no spin. Today, we are coming with a special edition of the Nigeria's election. 1 year to the Nigeria's election. We haven't had addressed this issue completely in a twist and 360 politics and flow, but today, hey, we say we are going to do it because that's where you can only come and have this kind of realistic analysis, of course, where you can have the realistic analysis on this specific election and in realistic terms without filter or spin. Just 1 year away from another general election, in theory, elections are meant to represent renewal, a moment where citizens promises against reality. But across Nigeria today, what dominates the public mood is not excitement, it's exhaustion. This episode examines Nigeria's economic hardship, insecurity, crisis, physical contradictions, and the deafening concern around direction of the political system, from rising inflation and currency devaluation to insecurity across multiple regions, from fuel subsidy removal to questions of accountability. This analysis explores a widening gap between policy promised and lived reality. Let's go. And we're coming back. Got the wires, number three. Unplug the lies, reveal what's unseen. Switch down bullets together, no filters, just truth. Time to awaken, challenge their proof. Cut the wires, shatter the screen. Unplug the lies, reveal what's unseen. Twist on 360, no filters, just truth. Time to awaken, challenge their proof. Yes, time to awaken and challenge their proof. Nigeria now stand just 1 year away from another election. In theory, elections are supposed to represent renewal moment when citizens measure promised against reality, when leadership is judged not by slogans but by results. Yet across Nigeria today, what dominates the discourse is completely different. What dominates the public mood is not excitement, it's exhaustion. And it is sickening and very sad that after all this time around, what is now occupying the public mood is exhaustion. This is a country confronting excruciating economic hardship, punishing insecurity at the same time. Markets across the nation reflect pain. The cost of food continues to rise astronomically. Transportation has become unbearable for ordinary workers. Salaries remain stagnant while inflation climbs relentlessly. What many Nigerians are experiencing is not simply inflation, but a deeper economic squeeze, a form of double digit stagflation where prices rise but economic opportunity refuses to expand. What a nation and what a renewed hope era we are in. Families struggle to survive each week. When the current administration campaigned in 2022, the promise was clear. Nigerians were told to expect a new economic down. The slogan was renewed hope. The government argued that bold reforms were necessary to rebuild the economy. One of the first major decisions was taken by this administration. One of the first major decisions that was taken at the Eagle Square was the first day that the President Tinubu was running, the removal of fuel subsidy. Nigerians were told that the funds saved from that subsidy would be redirected at development, infrastructure, welfare programs, and long term economic stability. Devaluation of currency in the name of stability and sustainability. But many Nigerians see today, but what many Nigerians see today is completely different, something very different. Instead of relief in the country, we are witnessing an astronomical rise in the cost of living, transportation cost surged, food prices climbed, electricity tariffs rose, and without electricity in itself, after the promise that without power in 2 years, don't vote for me. That's exactly how this administration promises Nigerians. And Nigerians are not forgetful of all these promises. Huh? He promises that if there is no electricity in 2 years, then don't vote for me. And he says that I asked for the job, don't pity me. We're never going to pity you. And economic wages remain stagnant at the same time, new taxes and revenue policies multiplied, creating impression that government increasingly views Nigerians not as citizens but as customers. And while economic pressure intensifies, insecurity continues to spread like a wildfire across the northwest. Urban banditry has grown more daring in the middle belt. Communal violence and banditry also and armed attacks continue to destabilize communities. In the northeast, terrorism remains persistent threat despite years of military operations. 5 or 6 high-ranking military officers within the span of 3 months were killed. The tragedy becomes even deeper when those tasked with protecting the nation themselves become victims. Nigerian soldiers continue to fall on the battlefield and by killed by terrorists, despite being stretched with multiple battleground. But perhaps the most painful moment come when civilians are caught in the violence they were supposed to be sheltered from. One incident that shocked many Nigerians was the bombing of Jili Market near Yobe, Borno border. During Operation Hadinkai, civilians were killed in a marketplace, a place meant for trade and survival by the very forces assigned to defend them. Borno state government was quick to come out and claim that they had closed the market 5 years ago, not even addressing the deaths of about 200 civilians, according to some reports, even though they say that the terrorists are embedded in the civilians. Shameful and disgraceful. That is within the Nigerian territory. Why conduct even airstrikes when there are troops that can be deployed and easily crush the terrorists without civilian casualties? This is very sad. The calls for thorough investigations and web of condemnations are not enough. There has been 2 or 3 incidents like that. There has to be accountability, and the DHQ has to put rigorous and harsher measures in place to avoid repeating these kinds of what they call quote operational mistakes. These are the people tasked with responsibility of defending our lives, protecting our lives and properties, yet they are now killing us in the name of operational error. Come on, what is that? At the age of artificial intelligence and all these technologies? That's very sad. Someone must be held accountable. There must be a consequences and responsibility over this issue. This moment lit citizens asking difficult questions about the direction of the war against insurgency and the banditry and the safety of ordinary Nigerians. At the same time, it continues to, at the same time, the government continued to speak about solving the problem. You remember last 2 weeks when the President Tinubu was in Jos for 10 minutes to see the victims and promised that this are never going to happen? After he left, it happens again. This is negligence. This is failure. And at the same time, the government continues to speak about fiscal discipline. When presenting budgets and economic plans, officials urge Nigerians to tighten their belts. The message is clear: sacrifice today for more stability. Really? You should sacrifice today for the stability of tomorrow. Well, I don't see this kind of that. The government, despite the removal of fuel subsidy, has taken millions, if not billions, if not trillions of in loans from foreign countries, mortgaging the future of young Nigerians. Is this what they call fiscal discipline? Is this the fiscal discipline that they are telling Nigerians? Yet many citizens observe a troubling contradiction. While ordinary Nigerians are asked to endure hardship, reports of luxury government spending continue to circulate. New presidential vehicles, foreign trips, expensive residences for top officials like vice presidents, and the symbols of elite comfort, yacht for the president in the Monaco there in France. This contradiction fuels anger and skepticism. In this Is this fiscal discipline or a form of economic injustice imposed on the many while the privileged few remains untouched at the top? Beyond the economics and security, another concern is quietly growing within the Nigeria's political landscape as it is 1 year to this general election. The country increasingly appears to be drifting toward a system where opposition forces struggle to organize effectively. Parties are weakened, fragmented, or absorbed into elite coalition. Political competition begins to look less likely anywhere there. No context, more like negotiations among powerful figures. And we are heading to a democracy where Nigerians do not have many choices. There are accusations of the electoral umpire, INEC, working with the ruling party to stop opposition parties, just like delisting the leaders of the newly formed opposition coalitions under the African Democratic Congress, ADC, which had all the country's political heavyweights when combined, they can triple or double the T-Pain numbers, yet they are being targeted. But there is another question emerging beneath the surface. If the traditional parties continue to rotate power among familiar elites who truly represent the millions of Nigerians facing poverty, unemployment, and insecurity, because the reality is undeniable. If the traditional parties continue to rotate power among familiar elites who truly represent the millions of Nigerians facing unemployment, poverty, and insecurity, because the reality is undeniable. Nigeria today is a country where hunger has become widespread, where multidimensional poverty affects tens of millions, where many communities feel abandoned by the very structures meant to govern them. That is why some voices now argue, and I'm among them, that the real solution might not simply lie in replacing one political coalition with another. And the deeper questions might be whether Nigeria requires something more fundamental, a coalition not of political elites who have destroyed the country, but of the oppressed, the neglected, and the forgotten. And I see this as the ideal, a coalition of citizens themselves, workers, youth, farmers, market traders, communities whose voices are rarely heard in the corridors of power, even though now, thanks to social media, the voices can be heard. But even though, despite all this, it is not a voluntary. You gotta like, share, and subscribe because the algorithm is never gonna do you a favor. You're gonna do yourself a favor. It will be about deciding whether the same political system continues to reproduce the same outcomes or whether Nigerians are prepared to imagine something different. A politics rooted in accountability, a politics centered on the dignity of the ordinary people, a politics that prioritizes justice rather than elite survival. The future of Nigeria will not be determined only in campaign rallies or party conventions. It will be shaped in the streets, the markets, the campuses, and the communities where citizens decide whether they will remain spectators or become participants in shaping their own country and their own destiny. And that is the question facing Nigeria 1 year before next election. 1 year before next election. Nobody benefits a part of this political elites. Is this moment simply another cycle of politics, or is it the beginning of a rupture, a turning point where Nigerians rise not just to change leaders, but to change the system itself? This is Twisdom 360 Politics Unplugged from Kowa Podcast. After a long time, we've come back with a new edition to give you a special edition of this uh, 1 year to Nigeria's election because it is very important. And there is this issue of crisis within the opposition party that is very sad. And that crisis has been planned and been put in place by the ruling APC, has been accused by the opposition themselves. And they are right. Look, PDP has a problem. Labour Party has a problem. And now the newly adopted party of the opposition also have a problem. And this is not coincidence. And if it's an accidental, then sometimes there are certain things in Nigerian politics that has to be has sense if they are not accidents. And these things are happening under someone who claimed to be pro democracy or pro democratic activist. Yeah, somebody that claimed to have fight for democracy. This is sickening. It is absolutely horrifying. And Nigerians have to fight for a future that they deserve. You've listened to Tuesday 360 Politics Unplugged from Kowa podcast, Voice of the Many, not just a few, a special edition on Nigeria's election, where we are shaping the opinions and saying the things that must be said. See you in another episode. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Follow us on Facebook, YouTube, and on Tuesday 360 Politics Unplugged and Kowa podcast, or my personal handle, Ibrahim Al See you in another episode.